everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is Point of View Hot Seat with Suzanne Culberg. And Suzanne was in my mentorship program and has done some really incredible stuff with Point of View. And so this is a chance for her to share it. My recollection of this, and Suzanne, feel free to correct me. I mean, when Suzanne came in doing weight loss coaching, and the thing that jumped out to me early on was this theme about overgiving, and that, you know, the reason that people often overeat or overweight is because they overgive. Of course, the same could be true for undereating or underweight. But it just seemed like a very core point of view. And so that really grabbed me, and that ended up becoming very central to Suzanne's point of view and her work. So anyways, very impressed with Suzanne's intrepid nature and hustle in business, and her acumen. And I just, you know, I think several times told her I just wasn't concerned about her or worried about her. So anyway, Suzanne, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I am good. Thanks for inviting me.
It's good to have you here. Now, where are you based, just for everyone?
At Sydney, Australia.
Okay. And is there anything I got wrong? Was there anything I missed in that introduction that you would add there?
No, it was pretty accurate. So I was kind of a bit lost in the woods when I first started working with you. And I remember something you said to me clearly. It was like, you know, with the point of view, when you go down to the harbour to get help with whatever it is that you're wanting help with, the thing with weight loss is that there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of boats there. It's not something, I can't remember the example you gave. It was something amusing that was like people, there'd only be a few. So it was a matter of finding the point of difference, or the thing that makes the journey that I take people on maybe not necessarily unique, because it's all flavors are the same, but something that people hadn't necessarily heard before. And I think I was a lot about mindset before we got into the overgiving piece. And even with mindset, there's heaps of people. So yeah.
Right. That makes me think. There was a video I did a while ago about how I think it was called something like "Tell Me Something I Don't Know." Because what happens is, and I think part of this, honestly, I was thinking, you know, if Suzanne wanted to get on a podcast, or she's just trying to reach somebody and they're reading headlines, if you could imagine, like, hey, I'm a life coach. Get me on your podcast. Or keep reading. Nobody keeps reading. It's just so generic. Or just, we'll stay with the podcast example. Hey, but no, I'm not just a life coach. I'm a health coach. Because we've seen it before. There's so many of those. We're down at the harbor. It's like, oh, you're a health coach, really? Oh, how unique! Just like all these other people. No. But I'm a weight loss coach specifically, and then still we're back to tens of thousands of boats. No. But I'm a weight loss coach that focuses on mindset. Okay, we eliminated 2 boats. You know, it's still, there's so many. So this becomes the challenge: is how do you winnow it down so that if you were to want to be on a podcast, they wouldn't say, yeah, I've heard it before, I've seen it. No, but weight loss has to do with mindset. Yeah, tell me something I don't know. And that's what and that's a sincere question. Would you please tell me something I don't know? And if we don't have anything they've never heard before, if there's nothing fresh or unique, some twist on it. Now that could be based on who you're trying to reach, what you do, how you do it, when you do it, where you do it, why you do it. All those things could be. In this case, it was something about the how, in meaning the point of view, the approach, the take on it. Because when she said that, I just thought, I've never heard anyone talk about this like that. And Suzanne, I remember you said you approached a few podcasts with that as the angle. And what was the response when you did that?
Yeah, I always get booked. So when I put like the first sentence of my thing is, what if you're overweight because you overgive? It has people's attention. For the people who it's a fit for, obviously, other people are like, but yeah, like I've been booked a number of times now because people are like, we haven't heard this angle before. So
yeah, great. And so that was a kind of an early seed. I think we got to that pretty quick, relatively.
In the first month or so, yeah.
But then it's expanded since there. So why don't we dive into it? You have some charts and graphs and such.
Yes.
And I need to make you a co-host on this one for you to share it.
Perfect. So just tell me when it should work. Oh yeah, it's gonna let me share now. The first graph that I kind of did hand drawn, I was hoping my team would have it back to me, but we've kind of have another lockdown here at the moment, so I don't actually have it. I've got a hand drawn diagram. But if you know a Venn, like basically for weight loss, traditionally you have diet, exercise, sleep, and overall it's habit change. So most people, when they're trying to lose weight, they'll go, I need to eat less, I need to move more, and I need to, sleep and hydration, like drink some more water. Like that's.
Can you hold that back?
Yeah. I didn't realize till this morning, I thought she would have it through, but unfortunately she doesn't. So it's like diet, exercise, sleep, and overarching that is habit change.
Yeah.
To a lot of people, that's the secret to weight loss.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
But, there's a glaring hole in that it doesn't address why people overeat in the first place. Like what is driving that behavior? Because so many people, they change their diet, they exercise, they drink more water, they go to bed early. It works for a bit until it doesn't. So when I started first doing the point of view, and I'm sure everyone here has had a, maybe not, or had a look, I think it's 20 odd pages, the point of view document at the beginning. We had a number of things like that I've drawn together, but none of them encapsulated everything. So if you're kind of there, or you're stuck, or you're like lost in the woods, I think it took me the better part of a year to get this final one together. So I just wanted to say that, this is a process. But where it's evolved to now, that's where I'll share my screen. Very excited about this. Is that showing for you guys now?
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
So when you look at habits, the biggest thing is that, yes, while they are a factor, it is only one part of the Venn, like one part of the puzzle. So many people I speak to, they're like, oh, Suzanne, I've tried everything. They may well have in one aspect. And I changed the words from diet because I'm an avid non-dieter. I don't believe in dieting. Diets are for dying, life's for living. So I changed the word to nourish, as in like nourishing our body with food. And then exercise makes me think of high school, not fondly. So I've changed that to movement, and then rest. So like getting adequate rest is important. So, those things are valid, but they're only one part of the puzzle. And then what happens is when people just address these things and they get results for a while, and then something happens and they're like, what is it? And they usually say, I ran out of willpower, or I ran out of motivation. So there's this thing that I call the void, which overgiving is a big part of. And maybe this is a work in progress. One of these things I'll change later to the overgiving part. But what I mean by the void is we all have it, whether we struggle with our weight or not, but it's our way that we avoid our challenging thinking, we distract ourselves, we numb out, and we often like feel shame for these behaviors. So when we don't address the void, which I believe for a lot of us drives our overeating, our overgiving, our overconsuming, you could even put overworking in there. There's so many applications to this. When we don't address that, it requires a lot of willpower to make a change. And after a while, willpower is an exhaustible resource. So it's kind of like holding a ball underwater. Eventually, it could be days, months, years, your arms get tired and the ball just shoots up again and you're like gain the weight back or start picking up your previous behavior. So that's part of it. But then people sometimes will, like I'm a mindset coach as well. That's what I used to say, mindset coach for weight loss. And I believe that mindset is also really, really important. But it's also just one part of the piece, because you can journal and you can meditate and you can do breath work and you can do thought work and you can look at your beliefs. And then do, movement, nourishment, and rest. But those things alone, they don't address what's going on internally, why we're driven to this behavior, why we're avoiding the void, why we're filling the void with other things. So that's why here I've got outer transformation, because people can and do lose weight. And with this part, what usually happens is they get really close to their goal. I'm in Australia, we measure in kilos. It could be kilos, could be pounds. They get, within 5 to 10 kilos of their goal weight. Something happens and then they give up and they end up bigger than ever. And they're wondering what's happened. It's because they haven't looked at this piece. So this is a lot of the yo-yo dieting in here, because they make the changes, but they're not looking at their void. But the other thing that people can do is they can address their mindset and they can start to do the inner work. But if you don't change any of your habits, like if you don't eat nourishing food and do movement and do the things that are actually good for your body over the long term, you get a lot of inner transformation. So you might transform the mental weight, emotional weight, like the load of these thoughts and feelings, but you don't actually have an outer manifestation of that. So, a lot of people are like, I've been doing this work for ages, Suze, but I'm not losing any weight yet. And it's a process and it takes time. And this kind of approach to lasting transformation, it's not let's diet really hard for 6 weeks and force ourselves to work out. Like anybody can lose weight in that model, but they don't keep it off. So it tends to be a slower burn at the beginning as we, a lot of this stuff's happening, the inner transformation before the outer transformation. And also when we move away from the dieting model, a lot of those things initially can be a lot of freak out for people, because I'm allowed to eat anything. I'm just going to have whatever. And then they get to a point where they're like, actually, this doesn't feel good in my body. I don't feel nourished. I don't feel rested. But there can often be this kind of spring back from years or decades of dieting to, coming over into this new way of being. So, and then supporting it all, like around the outside, is this supportive resident community. Because for anybody who's tried to lose weight, and you've talked about it with people who don't get it, I'm hesitant to say they are well-meaning when they say, all you need to do is eat less or move more. Or have you tried keto, paleo, isogenics, Herbalife? Like insert the thing here. They have the best interest at heart. But when you say, like I'm working on my mindset, or I'm looking at the void or something, the deeper that's driving me to overeat, you kind of get this like nascent eye roll and how long is this going to last? Because they don't get it. So it's like a community where you can say, I had a bad day and I ate Macca's, rather than I'm a bad person because I ate Macca's. There's so much shame and these shame spirals in with your overeating. So it's like having a place where you can explore this and not just be told, have you burnt your 500 calories today? Where's your tracker? Like looking at these external measures, but what's going on inside. So yeah, that sums it up.
Amazing, Suzanne.
Do you want me to stop the share or leave it? I'm happy either way.
Yeah, let's I know, actually keep it up for now. But I would love to invite just any questions that people have about this. Is there anything that's not clear? I have a few thoughts and reflections, but I'd be just curious to hear from people, I guess, your reflections. What's clear? Is there anything that's unclear for you? And you could type this in the chat. You could unmute yourself and speak.
I wanted to say I really appreciated the visual of it. I am a person who does keto and has had great success with it, but I went through all of those things. And that just happened to be the process I used to go through. But the inner transformation was my why. And the outer transformation is what the world sees. The willpower was cleaning out the pantry and throwing every single thing and having a completely empty pantry, which is what happens when you go to a low carb diet. And so all of those words around it were really very interesting. I found it to be really effective. So I wanted to say thank you. You're very well done. And I actually am being on mine for 2 years and seeing the physical differences. This has been what the world sees is this little outer transformation thing. And the lasting thing's mine inside of me, but they see that. but it started right over here with my why and where it was. So yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And Sunday was saying the diagram is brilliant, makes it really easy to see why ordinary methods don't work and what it takes to get lasting transformation. Yeah, so this is something I really want to underline for people is this is one of the points of point of view marketing. I did a video about this the other day, it just came to me so clear. So your niche, one of the easiest ways that people come to niche, or the most common ways, is sort of what's missing in the community. Oh, nobody's doing this. Nobody's got a pizzeria on this island. I'm gonna open a pizzeria. Nobody's doing massage, you know, oh, no yoga classes, great, I'll do that. So you do something that nobody else is doing, or you do it in a way nobody else is doing, or you do it for, oh, there's yoga, but there's no yoga for depressed people. So I'm gonna do yoga for that. But point of view, so if the niche is what's missing in the marketplace, point of view is what's missing in their approach. Yeah, that's the difference. Niche is here's what's missing in the community. But point of view is here's what's missing in the approach to solving this problem or in the approach to creating this product. That's a good, easy way to think about point of view of what is it that makes you different. Yeah, when people are trying to lose weight, what's missing? And so what Suzanne's saying is, well, man, this habits thing everybody focuses on, maybe sometimes mindset, but there's also this third part, this deeper part called the void. So that's a way to consider, if you're looking at your own point of view, to ask yourself, yeah, what's missing? What do people not do? What do they leave out? That because they leave that out, they just don't get the results. And then Maria was saying, why is willpower in pink?
I wanted it in red, but it looks clashy. The reason it's in a different color is because like I don't believe in it. Like a lot of people talk about willpower or motivation. I believe it's an exhaustible resource. When it's not there, you got to walk. So a lot of people, when they just force their habit change, but they do get results. Like people say, I do get results for a bit, Suzanne, and then I don't. And then people give their power to the program, whatever program they've done. Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. I'm not knocking any of these things. And for some people, that's the pure frustration with weight loss. For everything you've tried, there's a bunch of people who did it and it worked, and then for you it didn't, and you feel like you're the only one, like it works for everyone else and not for me. But the thing is, the reason that they work is because you've got this willpower for a bit, and then you're giving your power away to the program. Like Weight Watchers works, but I'm the lazy person who can't stick to it. Where the real thing is, it's not addressing that void, and that's why it's in a different color there, and that's why people can see results for a little while. And then the power is always with the individual. They're the person who's lost the weight, they're the person who's gained the weight, they're the problem, they're the solution. And when we give it to a program or a person or a thing and then put them on a pedestal, and then it just adds more to the void and the shame and the numbing that there's something fundamentally wrong with me because I can't do this. Whereas really, in my point of view, it's that willpower motivation. You've been tagged in a fat photo, or your fat pants no longer fit, or you've hit that number on the scale. That's your motivation, that's your willpower for a bit. But then when that's gone, when you've reached under that number or your fat pants fit again, and you're just like, now I can breathe, you're not actually addressing these deeper things.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was done.
Somebody else was wanting to speak there. Has anyone else got any thoughts or reflections here? Okay. Oh, so Linda said, is there any positive way of relating to the void? Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Is there a sort of flip side to the void? Like once you really tend to the void, what is there? What's your sense?
I think the flip side of the void is realizing that it's always going to be there, but not to fear it, because some people will think, once I've lost weight, everything will be magical. Once I've made the money, everything will be magical. Once I've built my business, like we have this kind of feeling that either we can't take action, like we can't fully live our lives until, or that once we've done this thing, everything's going to be great. But what the thing of the void is, like, there's always going to be a gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And it's like, you don't need to get rid of these feelings that are uncomfortable or challenging. in order to live like a really great life. Because we know what we're like at our worst when, you know, we haven't washed our clothes for a couple of days and we're eating takeout and whatever, but what are we like at our best? A lot of us fear we have to get rid of that before we can have this. So the flip side of the void is knowing there's always going to be doubts, and there's always going to be disappointments, and there's always going to be things that didn't turn out the way we thought, but we can still, you know, we can turn that into our superpower, because we can just be like, you know, it's really kind of hard to describe, but it's kind of like there's both. The old way doesn't have to die for the new way to be born. We can, you know, the doubts, the thoughts, the things that come up can always be moved through at any stage. And, you know, it's not, because like for me, every time I'd read a before and after story or watched a program, like people were like, my life was terrible before, my life was magical after. And that was just never the case for me. And I was like, you know, is there something fundamentally wrong with me that my life isn't like this? But it's realizing that doubts and fears and stuff is always going to be there, but it doesn't have to stop you from, you know, taking action. You can have both. And also too, the other thing about the void, I think that's a good thing, is like for me now, I've released 78 kilos, which is like 170 pounds. When my void behaviors come back up, in the past, I'd always fear I'm going to gain the weight back. And for a lot of people who've dropped weight, that's a huge fear. And it's peppered through my point of view document with Tad. He kind of pulled it out from me. I didn't want to say it. But, you know, it came out. It was like, what if I look like this like giant fraud, freak, hypocrite, whatever? But when those behaviors come back up, and they do, like not infrequently, but I have the tools and I have the things to work through, but also it's a sign where Sue's not taking care of herself. Like at the moment, we're in our 3rd week of another lockdown. It looks like it's going to be extended. When I buy stuff for the kids that I know is really for me, it's like a traffic light. It's a sign, hang on, you need to slow down. You need to look at this distraction and this shaming and look after you. So I suppose the flip side is it's not a bad thing. It can be a sign that, you know, perhaps we're not necessarily looking after ourselves. And we know that before we've gained the weight, gone broke, or, you know, suddenly looking for a magical solution.
Thank you. Okay, can you stop the screen share?
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, first of all, everyone, you've just seen a really lucid diagram, a really lucid point of view. And let me, Suzanne, share a thought that I don't know actually if Venn diagram is the best one for this one, maybe. So I'm just going to share an alternative pitch here. So let me just see if I can make sure it's on the screen. Okay. So you may want, I don't know if you want to do a screen capture of that. Can you actually do a screen capture and load that up into the chat there, somebody? So this is sort of a potential redo of the whole thing. Has anyone
I've got a screen capture. I'll put it in the chat just a sec.
You did?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So, so here's what occurs to me is, well, I'll wait till this is there so people can have it up while I'm speaking. Is that it doesn't, a Venn diagram, when we're looking at point of view, means all three things are equal. And yet that's not the feeling I get from hearing this, is not all three of these circles are completely equal or carry the same weight. The feeling I got was sort of the habits are the smallest element in a way, then the mindset is the next biggest, and then the most important one is the void. Okay, so there it is in the chat. You can open it up. Why am I opening it up? I have it in front of me. All right. So, and what struck me is that if we could break it down a different way. And so this is useful, by the way, with point of view, is just to consider different visuals, different ways of literally physically mapping it out. And if you look in the point of view, in the membership, you've got that point of view quiz, the questionnaire. And if people, you know, are watching this on YouTube, you can buy the point of view ebook, and then there's a link to this that you'll get. but there's a number of shapes. So this, spiral, circle, steps, ladder, labyrinth. There's a lot of visuals you could do, but it occurs to me a pyramid might be one for this. Because yeah, habits seem to be like the short-term fix. Like, hey, if you want a short-term fix, you just change some habits, but it probably won't last. If you do the mindset work, this is more of a medium term. And then really doing the work on the void, that's the long term. And it struck me that willpower kind of goes in between, yeah, mindset and the void in a way of like, or in this model, because it's saying, if you don't deal with the void, or it's like the all your willpower is keeping the beach ball down, and that's the void to me in this metaphor. And you can only do that so long, and eventually it's going to pop up and it's going to ruin the habits and the mindset. It's going to splash everywhere, and all of your makeup is ruined. You're trying to hold it down to look good, but it just doesn't last. So I could see that as a possibility. And then to me, I think there's more work that could be done on what's the relationship between the mindset and the void, because in some ways those sound a little similar. And so I think that could do with a bit more just clarifying and teasing apart, and it's like, what's that relationship about? How does, if it was on top of it, like, how does it sit on top of it? Do the stressful limiting beliefs, do they come from the void? Are they a compensation for the void? Are they how we're trying to cope with the void? Are they, it could be interesting to look at. And then and then also, I mean, sort of further on to Linda's question about, I think there's probably more to dig into about the blessings or the gifts of the void. That there is a kind of other side of this, that maybe it never goes away, but, or maybe another way to ask it is, what's the best relationship we can have to the void? What's the proper, most affirming, nourishing relationship we can have to this emptiness that's in us, these doubts, and then are the doubts the mindset? Is that the void? Or so those things came up. And the reason I lifted up is because I just found myself a little confused, where it's like, okay, what is that or this? And ideally, when we're sharing our point of view, we don't want any fuzziness. We just want people to say, oh, yeah, I get it. I see where these things fit. And if they're left kind of sitting there like, what bucket do I put this in? It's not clear what bucket. A part of their brain is now occupied with that, and they're not listening to what we're saying anymore. So ideally, we just want it to be so lucid. But I could see that, where it's like, look, what happens if you really give attention to that void? You give attention to that, the pain. It makes me think of Gabor Mate's work, where he talks about addiction. It's like, it's never why the addiction, it's always why the pain. Because the addiction is always an attempt to cover the pain and to deal with the pain. So that's the real question, why the pain? What's going on? But then what's on the other side of that? When you really sit with the pain, is there some healing there, some wisdom? Do we ever get to the other side of that void? Is it always there? Is there a kind of presence on the other side of it? I remember talking with a fellow, Tom Compton, who does the work of Byron Katie, and he said, I said, what do you think addiction is about? He said, as near as I can tell, it's our trying to avoid emptiness. But so if you're just willing to be with the emptiness, then what comes? When you stop trying to fight it, when you just make space for it, and the feelings that are coming. And yeah, and then what's the difference between uncomfortable feelings and the void? Is that more of a mindset thing? So those are questions that come up for me. And then it struck me also that you've got the inner and the outer transformation. Like the habits and the mindset are outer transformation, but also it seems like mindset and the void are inner transformation. And so then you have mindset in both, and it's sort of in the center. So then I found myself, if it is in the center, in this model it is, but then why is it in the middle? Why is it the connecting piece? What's the important role that it plays in between habits and the void? Because it seems to have a kind of intermediary function. And so these are the types of things you can start as you draw it out. You're like, oh, yeah, why is that? If that was there, why would that be there? And also part of the rationale behind asking that is, there's this assumption to me that everything on the map has a really important role. It's even if it's smaller, like you can see on this one, I probably should have drawn the base bigger and everything and made that even smaller at the top. But number one is you can draw things proportionally. So, Suzanne might say, no, habits really like just like the tiny tip of the pyramid. Okay, then you draw it like that and people can visually see it like, oh, you think habits real small. Or she may say, no, that's actually about perfect. It's closer to a third or whatever it is. But if I were to say, yeah, it's small, but small doesn't mean unimportant. So one can still say, look, it's smaller, but here's the vital role it plays. This is like the tip of the spear. This is what pierces, and yes, the shaft of the spear is, but then, so that could be a whole other thing. It'd be, oh yeah, this is much more like a spear and that's the tip of the spear. And the mindset is like the little feathers in the back guiding. Do they put feathers on spears? In my world, they do. And then the void is like the shaft of the spear. You see what I'm saying? Now we've got a whole different image for it. And you say, yeah, dealing with the void, that's what gives it the thunk. That's what gives it the power. So it really penetrates. Because if you just throw the tip of the spear, it won't go through anything. It bounces off things. So you can start to come up with these analogies that where people, because what we want is when people see it and hear it, that's just like, I get it. That makes total sense to me. That resonates, that lands. And so something in the Venn diagram didn't 100% land as intuitively obvious. And the other thing why I loved what you said, Suzanne, was that willpower is not a renewable resource. So maybe that fits in here of like, you can't hold it down forever. That's not a sustainable move to hold a beach ball underwater. You will eventually, you'll faint, you'll pass out, it's gonna pop up. You can't keep it down forever. And so then, to me, there'd be this question of like, well, to continue that metaphor, well, what is the void? Is that you just let it come up and play with it above the surface, maybe? I mean, that could be part of it. It's like beach balls are supposed to be under the water. They're supposed to be for fun and bouncing around and playing. And that the void can be that too, if you're willing to make it conscious, if you're willing to deal with it. It doesn't have to be a bummer all the time. It can just be like, wow, okay, there's my insecurity again. And one can have a more playful, lighter relationship to something so heavy, maybe. Okay, so I'll stop there. Those were some of the thoughts that came to me. Suzanne, how does that all land for you?
That all lands really good. And I like the idea of finding another shape, because I have a question that was never on my Venn or this model that I would like to put, but I wasn't sure how, in that a lot of the times when people, their way of avoiding the void is overeating, and then they're not aware of this, like the void or anything. So they do the habits, but they change their avoidance of the void from overeating to over shopping or over exercising. And like a lot of people will laugh at over exercising. Well, that's what's wrong with that. Anything done to excess is unhealthy. That's how I injured my back because I've lost and gained weight. But like I was just changing the way, like, changing addiction, so to speak, and the addiction was avoiding the pain. I'm not sure how I'd put that on there.
I get it. Well, I could see adding that as the very, very tip. So it could be something like this, where at the very tip are the symptoms.
Oh, yes.
And the over, kind of like over shopping, over giving, over eating, over whatever.
Yeah.
So it might be like, the very tip, and people get obsessed about the symptoms. And then people think, aha, no, I'm wise. What you need are habits. Don't worry about the symptoms, worry about the habits. And people think, wait, no, because that's driven by the mindset. And then you're saying, look, there's a level below all of that. And if we don't tend to that, the thing that it could be like the engine that keeps us going it's just the willpower. And to me, there is also something about, when you let the beach ball up, that energy can go in other places. There is something freeing, I found, when you really contact something deep, something core, and you make a shift at that level. You're just not in resistance anymore. And so there's more of a flow. There is maybe this is part of it's so funny that in some ways the void is like the Gnunga gap, in Norse mythology, kind of in the beginning, there was nothing, there was a void. There are so many creation stories of that. But that void was pregnant with the universe. Like, so there's an infinite well of energy in that nothingness. But if you're trying to keep it down, I mean, you're going to lose. You're fighting that. It's that you can't win it. And so then how do you align yourself with it? How do you align yourself with this bottomless, fertile reservoir of life-giving energy? You know, so there's a whole other understanding of that. And then, so then it becomes, you know, and so then you could even say, that's interesting, because I mean, you could say, like, look, what a lot of people do is like they're trying to balance the void on top of this, but it's just crushing the pyramid. It's like, no, it's got to go at the bottom or something. You know, you're trying to balance it, but it's too heavy is another possible metaphor if it was a pyramid.
Another way I describe it, it's not necessarily, I'm not much of a drawer, but like and because this actually happened, so it was like in real life, we had a hole in our ceiling. So when it rained, the water came into the house. And so we're renting, I rang the landlord, they sent somebody around. I didn't pay attention to what they do. I don't deal with ceilings. Anyway, then like 2 weeks later when it rained, it happened again. And so basically, like, they'd paid to have the carpets replaced, they'd painted the walls, and this is what the habits are like. It's like, I paint the carpets, I change the carpets, I paint the walls, but we're not dealing with the void, like the reason why we're overeating. So next time there's a storm, inside's a mess again. So it's like, what's happening here that we need to address, but then at the bottom in the pyramid thing. But like, we're not addressing the hole in the ceiling when we're just changing habits.
Really good. And Nico, you had a question.
Yeah, not a question. I wanted to support the idea of the pyramid, because I really like, I mean, usually I really like circles, but in this case, you were talking about, Suzanne, you were talking about people going round and round and round and doing the same thing over and over again. And so I think visually the circle does reflect more that, oh, I did it again and now I'm even heavier and stuff. So that's one thing that I like more about the pyramid, that goes like to where they really want to be. The other thing is, I like that what distinguishes you from other people in working with overweight is the void, and putting that at the base and saying, look, this is like that. If I were your client, I'd feel like, oh, it makes perfect sense why I should work with her, because she's addressing the most important thing, like the base. And when I saw the circles, it was less clear to me. And that's the third point that I like about it. When I look at the pyramid, it's like a roadmap for me. Oh, I actually have to start with the void, and then I'm going to get lasting change. So I know there's a process, and the circles didn't give me that sensation. And the fourth thing, and Ted, you also already talked about it, the void. I translated a book by a Canadian doctor who does what he calls void work. And there is a certain, like, it has something in common with what's his name? You mentioned
Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate's work, because Michael Greenwood defines the void also in a positive way. He uses like body work, acupuncture and stuff to bring people into an altered state of consciousness without any substances. And then often they find that in the void, there's the solution. The void is not the problem. The void is actually like that. It has to do with our souls being disconnected. And that connects so much to what you said, Ted, about that's where the origin is. That's where everything comes from. That's where your life force actually is. And instead of defining it like a problem, it's actually where the solution lives. It's freaking scary sometimes to go in there, because everything you didn't want to face, you might meet it. You don't know what you're going to meet, but it takes courage. But this is why I like the pyramid so much, because it connects all these dots that I think are very useful.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really good. Linda says, I could also see where we are trying to fill the void with these behaviors rather than relating to it. Right. So this is interesting. It's like, do we see the void as a place, a resource to go to where there's already wealth, or are we trying to pack it full of all these things? we see it as something to fill versus something that could fill us. And
Ooh,
then
yes.
she said, a house. I like the metaphor, since our bodies are a home in this lifetime too. Yeah, I could see this all also being completely redone in a house metaphor. Possibly. I mean, these are just good things to play with. There may be something, because that metaphor you give about a house, and then you just keep painting the carpets, and that's not a sustainable solution to do that. You've got to fix the core problem, and if the core problem is the void, then right. And then Maria was saying, yeah, you have to go back to the foundations of the void. You need brutal honesty to navigate the void, for sure. And it said, I'm also curious about concentric circles, where the innermost circle is the void. Yes, I mean, basically a pyramid and concentric circles are the same thing, just seen from the top, but even the visual difference, because a pyramid also does have a certain connotation to it of there's a top, so sometimes concentric circles just visually, that slight twist on the theme does work better. So I could see that too.
I like the pyramid idea, as in you start with a foundation and then work your way up, because habits really is last. And I've talked with you, Tad, in my point of view document about, like, if there was stages, stage 1 is like identifying the void. Stage 2, which is the biggest and longest, is learning to sit with the void. Right. And stage 3 is the habit change. And most people, like, we did it like I can't remember what you call that, like a bell curve kind of thing, because stage 2 is the longest, and it's hard to sit through that. Whereas people are shouting at you, just drink these shakes, and your friends are getting skinny and you're still fat, and you're like, this is frustrating as hell. So it's tempting to go to these other faster things. I get the temptation.
Yeah. Well, and it's shit. So just another possibility is, you can always do the circle and the triangle and the circle. So it could be like, I screwed this up, but it could be like symptoms, habits, mindset, all surrounded by the void. So it's like, this is all in that. This is the context in which it happens, is another possibility. The thing is, it's just got to be visually consistent. Because the beauty of something like this, why we take so much time just busting our brains on what's the perfect image and nitpicking at it. It's like, but wait, that seems to, why is that here visually? And that seems, it can't be to the left, because that would mean that. The reason we do that is because when you're doing an intro presentation, which, as you know, I'm a fan of doing here's my basic take on things. You have an image like that you can put up, and it just sits there the whole time. And they keep looking back to it throughout your presentation. And what you want is, by the end of the presentation, it makes more and more and more sense. The nightmare is at the end, they're like, wait, I can see 10 inconsistencies with that. That doesn't make any sense at all. It should just be like, oh, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, oh my God, every time you share another story, it's just they see another level of it. And so when they leave, again, whether or not they buy from you, they're left with a sense of, I'm kind of sold on that perspective. Man, that makes sense to me. Right, we have to deal with the void. I see, now I see what the void is, and yeah, you can't hold the beach ball down like forever, and inner and outer transformation, short-term, medium-term, long-term, all of that. Because then the beauty of this also is you can say, look, oh, and also, I can even see this, if we go back to the pyramid, is, dealing with the symptoms level is just, it's immediate. It's not even short-term. It's like, hey, are you depressed because you're overweight? If it's just symptoms, you want to lose weight, cut off your legs. There you go, you lost weight. But or you can just drink yourself into oblivion. And look at that, you don't feel miserable anymore until you hit that part of being drunk, and then now you're real sad. Or you can just do cocaine, you can do drugs, you can take uppers and you'll feel great. That's the immediate. If you're, or you can distract yourself with TV, you can just numb yourself out, you can overeat, and then that'll deal with the initial immediate feeling, or overshop or over exercise, whatever. But that's just the immediate thing. And it's like, okay, now if you want And so, but you can tell people without judgment, you say, look, if that's where you're at, here's a list of ways to feel better right now. And there's no judgment. And then now, if you wanted just short term, yeah, then you got to change your habits. And if that's all you want is a short term thing, I mean, maybe that's all you want. I don't know. You're auditioning for a part in a movie, you got to lose the
Get
weight.
married. You got your high school graduate like reunion.
Right. So it's like, and then after it, you just couldn't give a shit. It's like, I'm doing it for this event, and then I'm fucking putting the weight back on, and I'll be happy for it. This is bullshit. I just have to do this for whatever reason. Then it's like, here you go. This is the short-term fix. This is what you do. This is going to have consequences, but maybe you're willing to pay them. It's fine. If you're looking for the medium term, it's this. But yeah, if you want the long-term sustainable, this is the rest of your life, here's the piece you have to add. And here's, and you know, this is the kind of thing in a sales letter that can be very compelling, where you have a section of, with Laura Valenti, who were working on her sales letter, we did a lot in this. And basically, there can be a section of the sales letter, here's what it will ask of you to do it this way. Here's what it'll give you. But it's going to ask a lot. If you're really going to face the void, it means you need to do, here's the price you have to pay. And you're just so candid with people. Like, this is not, you take 5 minutes a day. This is this many hours. It means very tough choices. It means losing friends. It means, you know, having to make new friends. It means saying no and very difficult. You make the list of here's everything that's probably will cost you. Like, this will be an expensive thing. And most of it won't be the money you pay me to help you. Most of the cost of this will be social, emotional, psychological, spiritual, like, yeah. But here's the other side. And, you know, and then also here's, I think it's worth saying, you know, here's what you will have to offer the world on the other side of this. If you really do this, bigger than you, more important than you and your own transformation, here's what you become capable of contributing on the other side of this. So for me, when somebody's getting really good at marketing, it's like, yeah, you'll make more money. That's true. Your life will be a little easier business-wise, but also you're going to be able to help your friends with their marketing in a way that none of their friends can. You're going to have an eye for them, probably help them better than you can help yourself. You know, so it's so true. So there's a lot of these things we can start putting in to the sales letter that relate to the point of view, also the bigger why, I suppose. But yeah, when you say, okay, here's this level, the void, but let me be real, and that's a filtering thing. So if you're not willing to do that, if you really don't want the long-term thing, it's fine. Here's some things for just the habits and mindset, you know, and it's not going to last. I'm just telling you now, this might last 3 months, 6 months, a year, 10 years at the most. But at a certain point, or when things go south, this will fall apart. Versus if you do this work, much harder to be thrown off. You know, and often the crises just actually become a chance to deepen. You don't get destroyed quite so easily. You're more resilient. And yeah, so this is for an intro workshop for a sales letter, having this kind of stuff laid out in whatever form it ends up finally being. And by the way, I will also make the pitch, you don't just have to stick with one image. You know, you can do multiple. You could say, look, here it is as a Venn diagram. Here's a pyramid. Here's a spear. Here's a house. Let me say it a bunch of different ways. Because sometimes then people are, oh, the third one. Now I get it. Now that makes sense. Sometimes you have to give a bunch of examples. So there's not only no shame in that, it's probably useful and nice to have a core one you can come back to, but I would recommend coming to it in a lot of different ways. Because, I mean, you know how it is, you'll hear whoever sharing something, it's like, yeah. Then you hear somebody else say the same thing. I mean, parents know this, tell your kids rah, 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 for years, and then they come home from school, my teacher told me this, I've been telling you that for 20 years. And, you know, they couldn't hear it from their parents. And sometimes we just, for a lot of reasons, the way that the person we're learning from is sharing it, and then you read another book, same thing, says slightly differently. So all power to y'all for saying it a lot of ways. It's interesting. Maria was saying also, I think feng shui is the attic, the roof is your mind. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, these are all, it's really great to just doodle. I highly recommend sitting down with a pen, just drawing it out, trying it this way, trying it that way, showing it to people. What do you think about this? Until something lands. Yeah. Well, any last thoughts?
That has been so good. Thanks, Tad. Thanks, everyone. It's really good to have it like, I'm like in the pyramid, but I was the different ideas and different ways to have it, because for some people, or it's just, as you said slightly differently, it lands. And I love it. And I love the thing about I think it was Nico saying going round and round with how it looks right now, whereas this is like the journey to the top, and that's where the people want to be, and you can see the layers through it. I like that better.
Well, I think you did that in your point of view. You had a kind of
I had it as a thing, as a triangle, but I think you in your message said, have you got a Venn diagram? So I was like, oh, I'll just make one of those. But like, I didn't have it this articulate, so this is really, really good.
Well, but this is what Nico said is a really good point, because sometimes you can say, look, here's the before and here's the after. The before is you're in a vicious cycle. You start here, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then you're back where you started. It's Groundhog Day is in a certain, which is what a circle does. A circle inherently is, now that can be a virtuous kind of cycle, like the seasons or something. But you see what I'm saying? The inherent nature of it is it never changes. It's always the same. And so then you're like, right, how do you break that? You break it with this pyramid. The way you break it is by this. And so we're going to talk about, the 4 different time frames of this. There's the immediate, the short term, medium term, long term. Let me walk you through it. And you say, look, and everyone, there's no judgment. You may not want to do this in the long term, or you may not be convinced yet. That's totally fine. I'm just saying, if you were, here's what it would be. But in the meantime, here's some quick things you can do if you need to. Right. Mark is saying, right, my experience is willpower is the weakest form of power. That's great. That's a good line. Right. And so then if it is the pyramid, it's like, right, how does willpower fit in? And then also, what's the opposite of willpower? Or what does willpower get replaced with? How would you articulate that? What is this kind of more self-sustaining? And if it's not the will, what is it? But what is because I get the sense willpower is a kind of white knuckling it, and you're just trying to tenaciously make it to the goal despite everything. And there seems to be another kind of power where it's a more flowing.
Like personal power. I'd need to play around with the language of it, but like, so say like when you have a baby and you're pregnant, you're going to get a baby at the end. Like you feel crap and you're vomiting and but it's coming. So the personal power is the thing that you're creating. It's going to be there. It's not, I'm not going to work on it when I feel like it, because that's willpower. And a lot of the time I don't feel like it. It's that personal power to turn up whether you want to or not. Like commitment kind of thing. But commitment's such a loaded word. I don't know. I'll play around with it. But like there's a difference between knowing it's going to work out and the way you act, as opposed to maybe if I feel like it.
Well, and what strikes me is maybe there's even a different term for each of these different levels of the.
They could be.
Like habits could be willpower. I don't know. Symptoms could be. It's like, what's the quality that gets brought? I don't know. Relief for symptoms, willpower for habits. Maybe there's something else for mindset and something else for the void. The kind of power that you experience. Because I don't know, when you're just trying to deal with the symptoms, there is a kind of power from that, a feeling of like I'm handling something. I did something. Like I got drunk. At least I did something about my pain. I mean, that's actually not nothing to deal with your pain. But then habits, willpower, and then if you deal with the mindset, you really do that. There's some other name for that kind of power that shows up that allows you to do that work. That shows up also maybe as a result of that work. And then there's a kind of power that comes that allows you to really deal with the void, but also that is on the other side. Oh, and of course the circle around this could be the resonant community. That might be the thing you say, like, look, if you want to deal with a void and you try to wander into the void alone, you're insane. don't ever try to do that alone. It's dark, it's terrifying, it's overwhelming. You need help. And so I could see, with the void, you could say, look, if you're going to deal with a void, you need three things. You need, number one, I mean, maybe that the mindset work is kind of a prerequisite to go down here. I don't know. But it could be like, look, you need yourself showing up as an ally to yourself. You need a kind of commitment. Number two, you're going to need some professional help, probably. I mean, it could be a therapist, a shaman, an energy, whoever. But you need somebody with some chops who's been in the void before and navigated it. And number three, you need a community around you. So then you could even have that as a Venn diagram inside the void. Like that's part of the pyramid. You have a little Venn diagram of, don't go down here without these three things. Because if you're missing any one of these, the whole thing's gone. So you could have that. And then, and then, hey, if you have, or I mean, it could be the circle around. I like the idea of the circle around the whole thing being resident community. But again, you see the difference of, it's subtle, but do we put it as one part of the Venn diagram here? Do we put this community as the whole thing? Or could it also be that the whole thing is surrounded by like sort of personal power, like a personal commitment, professional help, and community as three concentric circles around the pyramid? There's different ways to do it. But I like that idea, because then you're saying that also, you see how this sets up. It's a nice setup for the pitch. So you're like, look, I have a program that has all those things, that has community. You will get help. It's for people who are committed. So it's a good setup. But it's also, what I like about point of view marketing so much is you're saying, look, so here's the shameless plug. Obviously, I've got something that offers this, but whether or not you get it from me, just if you're going to sign up with somebody else, these are things to look for. Is it just one? Is there a community? I'm just telling you, a community makes a big difference on this one.
Yeah.
Totally. So you can make the case. That's just the mantra to go through our minds when we're sharing our point of view. When we get to the pitch, it's just whether or not you buy from me. Here's what I want to say, and of course, here's what I've got. Here's my best, explanation of it. But it's kind of over to you, because at this point, by the end of the presentation, they've either bought it or they haven't, meaning the point of view. They either agree with you or they don't. And if they don't, it doesn't matter how good your pitch is. And if they have, you get away with a fairly shitty pitch and people still want to work with you. Like in my pyramid, obviously, the pitch is the tip and the point of view is just the rest of it. It's so small, the doing the pitch, and people put so much energy into getting the pitch right, but it's much better to get the point of view right, to get the perspective right. And I love these comments here. I could does the rage beach ball turn into a life buoy? Rage beach ball.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
These are great ideas. Yeah. The beautiful thing too, also, there are two levels of this. I'll leave this with, because I just did a video on this. When you're doing this and sharing this in front of an audience, there are two things happening in their minds. Whether or not you say, and I actually would suggest you direct their attention to it, but even if you don't, they're automatically doing two things. Number one is they're looking at their own life and saying, what's missing? They're saying, oh man, I didn't do any of the mindset work. I've completely never heard of the void and I have no community. No wonder it's not working. So it's a bit of a diagnostic, number one. But number two, there's a cultural lens at this. It's hard for people not to say, wait a minute, nobody has these things. Nobody gets support looking at the void. Nobody has community these days. So, and that can be a really beautiful thing that you can be lifting up in your workshops. You can say, look, you can see this is missing culturally. We're compensating for tremendous poverty culturally. And we're trying to do something about it in a very small way here. But we shouldn't have to be building a resonant community. We should have been born into that. This dealing with the void should have been contended with by initiations and rites of passage and old folk tale. Like we should be, I mean, this never goes away for humans, but we could be held in a culture that's helping us deal with this. And here we are. So there is a cultural aspect to all of these. The fact that it's missing in their life means it's missing in the culture, sort of ipso facto. And I think people see that. So that can be a way to, tie things together at the end of the or beginning of the presentation. You just say, look, let me just unpack this at a bigger level. Everything I just said here for you applies to all of us. And, and let's build more of a culture like that. And so then that ties into Simon Sinek's stuff about the bigger why, which is, again, whether or not they ever shop with you, they leave, I think, more inspired about a better world and clear about what's missing and more likely to be a part of some solution, having seen that, than they would have been otherwise. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. Any last thoughts, Suzanne? I mean, thank you so much for being willing to come and share your really beautiful work with us and be willing to receive our ideas and reflections on it.
Thank you so much for having me and for all the suggestions. I've got so many ways I can go now. It's exciting. And I just want to say, like, from at the beginning, the point of view was really overwhelming, and I would have had a conversation like this and maybe gone and cried in the corner. But now I'm like, yes, I can see so many different things. So wherever you are on the journey of point of view, it's a process. And it's exciting now.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yes, amen. And remember, we've got the Point of View 30-day program coming up. I mean, recording this in 2021, is it? Yes. And it's coming up in August. But every year for the foreseeable future, it'll be in the third quarter of the year, a 30-day program on point of view marketing. The basic, the flow of it, 5 weeks, but a good way to also look at point of view marketing. Week number 1, we look at the route, which in my case would be the tip of the pyramid here, smallest, but the 7 steps, whatever your process is generically. Number 2, we look at the compass, the kind of core principles. What are the main ideas? So Suzanne gave a great example with what if you're overweight because you overgive is a kind of core foundational idea. The idea that we have a void, that you need to deal with a void. These are core principles. Week number 3 is the map. Exactly this. Starting to like visually, how the hell do you diagram this stuff in a way that people see it and they just got it. Makes sense. I mean, for those of you who are curious, you should look at the one Linda Katz this year. I did one with her months ago now, and just extraordinary work that she did in her point of view as well. So, so we'll be looking at the map. I find that the hardest one, frankly, because it's just not such a sequence. It's a bit more artistic license, and there's more to it. Week number 4, we're going to be looking at the message. So the message is where you distill it down to a pithy. So what if we're overweight because we overgive is a textbook example of a message. Marketing can feel good. Every act of business can be an act of love. You have to do the work yourself, but you don't have to do it alone. Russell Scott. So there's a lot of these little, but if you can distill it down, so that's week 4 and week 5, I think it's just kind of catching up, right? And then Ingrid on July 27th, Ingrid Lill is doing her doodling event, which is very aligned with this mapping work. How do you draw it out? I just can't recommend this enough to get it out of your head. Index cards, paper, markers, pens, just let yourself draw and visually see how things relate. Because, articulating your point of view starts with an articulated understanding in your head where everything's connected. Because if you have it clear here, it'll be clear on your tongue. Yeah, but it starts here. Well, I don't know if it starts here. You can also start here and talk your way towards it. Just start talking with people, have conversations, and it'll also articulate itself here. So that's coming up as well. You have to read the point of view book and workbook before the course. You don't have to, but if you want to be a keener, it will help. I mean, it probably help. Yeah, the more the videos you watch, the more because I'm not going to be going over much of the content during the calls. The calls are just, we're doing this now. So I'll give you the exercise. So it'd be good if you have some core familiarity with it. If you don't, you'll still get something out of it. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Really kind of you to show up, and I'm glad it was useful for you all. More of these coming up. I'm doing another one with Zara Efan, I think, coming up soon. A bunch of the other folks who are in the mentorship program, but just their point of view is really, really great. And so they'll be sharing some of that. So more chances to see this in real life, what this looks like. And we'll be workshopping it like this as well. So deep gratitude for you all being here. Lots more good stuff coming, and see you soon. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.